Another reading of AGHORA 2 Kundalini by Robert Svoboda. Yeah, if you're watching this after the fact, you might have missed it live, as YouTube has taken it upon themselves to kick me the fuck off the site for the week. Let's hope it's only the week. Let's hope. And I'll be back again soon and have all this content for you, the people, on YouTube. This chapter is entitled The Esoteric Ramayana. Vimalananda used to organize a small function each year on Guru Purnima, Guru's full moon, the day on which one's guru is worshipped. He would arise well before dawn and worship his own gurus, and then all day long his spiritual children would drop by to offer their thanks for what he shared with them, and to request his blessings for further spiritual development during the coming year. Lunch would be prepared and served to everyone who came, and the afternoon and evening were reserved for the singing of devotional songs. Because of the difficulty in fitting everyone into his flat, one year we decided to rent a marriage hall for the purpose, and hired a female kirtankar, a sort of spiritual bard, to recount stories of the Lord for us. While we were waiting for her to arrive, someone turned on a pre-recorded cassette of a recitation of Tulsidas Ramayana, performed by M, a very famous Kirtankar. The story of the Ramayana is the story of Prince Ramachandra. Just before he is to be crowned king of Ayodhya, his father's third wife, Kaikeyi, reminds his father, King Dasharatha. See, this is why I want to move on to English books for a little while. This shit scrambles my brain. Just before he is to be crowned king of Ayodhya, his father's third wife, Kaikeyi, reminds his father, King Darsharatha, of two boons the king had given her long before. For her two boons, she asks that her son Bharata be made king, and that Rama be sent to the forest for 14 years. Rama is joined in this penance by his wife Sita and his brother Lakshmana. After many adventures, Sita is stolen by Ravana, the demon king of Lanka. Rama has to search long and hard to find her again, and once he finds her, he has to invade Lanka with an army of monkeys and bears headed by Anjanaya, and kill Ravana in order to get her back. This is the mission for which he was born, because Ravana had oppressed the whole world. The tape we were listening to covered only a small fragment of this epic, and when it ended, Vimalananda asked, "Do you know M's story?" I did not, and if anyone else did, they did not let on. He was once a school teacher in Saurashtra, a region of western India. When he was small, his grandfather used to sit the boy on his knee and recite the Tulsidas Ramayana to him. Eventually, M memorized the entire book. While he had his teaching job, he used to recite this Ramayana here and there for a few hundred rupees at a time. One vacation, he went to Mount Girnar, and while wandering around, he came across a sadhu who was very fond of Anjanaya. The sadhu requested him to recite the Ramayana for him, and M did it so well that the nearby statue of Anjanaya started to shed tears. The sadhu himself was so overwhelmed with joy that he blessed M. Really speaking, it was Anjanaya himself who delivered the blessing through the medium of the sadhu. And the result? M now lectures before audiences of tens of thousands of people who sit in pin-drop silence attending on his every word. People are ready to give him millions, but he doesn't accept any money, except on one day of the year, today, Guru Purnima, which is a good thing since Tulsidas did not write his version of the Ramayana in order to make money off it, and certainly not so that someone else could make money off it. At this point, our Kirtankar suddenly arrived, and Vimalananda interrupted his story. A few days later, when a convenient moment to resume it arose, I casually suggested to him that we listen to another of M's Ramayana cassettes. At the end of one side, I switched off the tape player and looked expectantly at Vimalananda, who gestured to me to sit down and prepare to listen mindfully. The Rishi's script everything before it happens, he began. There is some room for improvisation, just as there is in any stage play, but the basic story does not change. He motioned to me to light him a cigarette. Thanks to the Rishis and their Leela, India has been blessed with two great epic poems, the Ramayana, which as you know is the story of Ramachandra, the seventh avatara of Vishnu, and the Mahabharata, which is basically the story of Krishna, Vishnu's eighth avatara. For thousands of years, these epics have been the foundation of India's culture. I have already told you a small part of the Krishna Leela and how it relates to Kundalini Yoga. Most Indians know the outline of the story of the Ramayana, and there are so many people, like M, who make their living by reciting and interpreting the Ramayana. Many of them, like M, are good people, but how little most of them really know of the Ramayana and of Rama. The esoteric Ramayana, the true spiritual essence of the story, is something very few people know. But it is something you should know about, because it relates to the awakening of the Kundalini. Redwing says I'm a good reader and I make it interesting. I try. It does seem a lot of people want Bigfoot content. I put up a poll on YouTube, and twice as many people voted for Missing 411 and Bigfoot content as they did spiritual content. But there is clearly a certain amount of people who want that, and I don't intend to stop. Redwing, I believe it was you who asked in the previous stream what the song was that's playing right now. Let me read off this title so you can find it on YouTube. Dark meditation music, beautiful cello, healing music. Search all of those words one after the other and it should come up. I want to remind anyone else who might be out there watching on whatever platform you're on, you can go to streamelements.com/yakovalive/tip to hook me up, bro. It's in whatever description you're looking at on whatever platform. It should be there. The script. We would never have had the Ramayana at all, had it not been for the Rishi Valmiki and his concern over how to spread out the karmas he had incurred through his chosen profession. Valmiki was not born a Rishi. In fact, he was a bandit. His job was waylaying people and robbing them. Sometimes he would hold them for ransom or even kill them. Occasionally, he would let them go. One day, Valmiki caught the celestial troublemaker. One day, Valmiki caught the celestial troublemaker Narada and told him that he would have to die because he had nothing of value to steal. Narada told him, "All right, I am ready to die, but please tell me why you rob people." Valmiki replied, "Because I have to feed my family." Narada then asked, "Do you think that they are all as willing to share in your karmas as they are to share in your income?" Valmiki said, "Of course they are not." But deep inside his mind, doubt suddenly took root. Narada told him, "Before you kill me and add to the weight of your karmas, why don't you first make sure that your family is willing to share them with you?" Valmiki returned to his home to inquire and got the shock of his lifetime when one after another his family members refused to have anything to do with his bad karmas. His parents told him, "We raised you and supported you while you were growing up. Now you have to pay us back. We don't care where the money comes from, that is your problem." His wife said, "I have borne you children and run your household. You owe me a living, and I am not interested in how you provide it. All your karmas are your responsibility." His children informed him, "We never asked to be born here. You have created us, and now you have to look after us at your own expense. You will have to worry about your karmas yourself." A shaken Valmiki returned to Narada, who had of course foreseen what would happen. Narada then taught Valmiki about how devotion to Vishnu can eliminate bad karmas. Because Valmiki could not pronounce Sanskrit correctly, he could not repeat Rama Rama, So Narada ordered him to repeat Mara Mara instead. Mara means killer, which was something Valmiki could relate to. Both Mara and Rama have the same letters, the same bija mantras, which means there must be a definite connection between them. There is also a definite difference in effect between them, due to the order in which the letters are pronounced, in the same way that there is both a connection and a difference between Hara, Shiva, and Raha, secret. Valmiki sat down and began to recite. He sat in one position for 60,000 years without moving. Ant-hills grew over him. He paused. I interjected. Naturally, since Valmiki means he who lives in a Valmika, an anthill or termite mound. That's right. By repeating Mara Mara at top speed, Valmiki actually started to repeat Rama Rama. When he finally emerged, he was a rishi. The Ramayana was composed long before it ever happened. First, the rishis got together and decided that they wanted a certain type of Leela. Then they commissioned Valmiki to write the script. It was just like writing the script of a drama or movie for him. Actually, it was even simpler. He simply opened himself up, and the senior rishis wrote the Ramayana through him. So his sadhana made him a vessel fit to hold the Shakti that the rishis wanted to manifest in the world through him. Yes, this is what I mean when I say that the rishis are the puppet masters, and we are merely the puppets. They decide what is to happen, and then arrange for it to happen. The events that followed the writing of the Ramayana were entirely preordained, and people think there is such a thing as free will. So there is no such thing as free will? There is really no such thing as free will for beings like us. Until you become a rishi, your options are to follow the script or not to follow it, and if you don't follow the script, you will eventually regret it. You can, however, choose just how you will follow the script, if your will is strong enough. Will is the power to direct the mind, especially when there are contrary thoughts or tendencies within it. The mind governs the senses, and the senses dominate the body through the nervous system. If the mind is untrained, as it is in most people, the will loses its authority and the body functions stupidly. You know that it is bad for your health to eat thick, juicy steak, and yet you do it. Your tongue overrides your willpower. You know that sleeping with a prostitute may give you a disease as a fringe benefit, but you go ahead and do it because your penis overrides your will. This is a type of mental impotence, an inability to control your actions, and it leads inevitably to unhappiness and frustration. All spiritual progress exists in the cultivation of a controlled mind. I am not talking about a closed mind, one which suppresses its desires. I am talking about a conditioned mind, which maintains close watch over the senses by force of will. This is why I so love Anjanaya. He is immortal, he is Superman, and yet his mind is always focused on Rama, and his will is always subordinate to the will of Rama. Take a leaf from Anjanaya's book and learn some humility, he said, focusing his gaze firmly on me. Very few people know that Anjanaya actually introduced the story of the Ramayana to the world for the first time. He wrote his version with his fingernails on blocks of stone. After some time, he realized that if his version became popular, it would interfere with the fame of Valmiki's version, and he also understood that in Kali Yuga, no one would be able to understand his Sanskrit properly, so he threw those blocks into the sea at Rameshwaram. They are still there somewhere, underwater. What did he care for name or fame? He only cared for Rama, so he could afford to be generous. Mentally, I bowed to the will of Rama. From one angle, episodes from the Ramayana take place every day in everyone's body. If people knew about this, they would marvel at it. The Ramayana has 7 divisions called khandas, which represent the 6 tastes in the body plus the 1 parama rasa, or supreme taste. Which khanda you relive depends on which taste you experience. If you are overwhelmed with lust, you relive the kidnapping of Sita by Ravana, and so on. But there is more. The story of the Ramayana is the story of the spiritual progress of an individual soul. All of us have the main characters of the drama present within us, and all of us who do sadhana live through the same sort of trials and tribulations that Rama and Sita had to endure. Rama, Sita, and the rest had their own personalities, and therefore their own kundalinis. But they also represent actors in the epic, which is performed by everyone who does Kundalini yoga. If you want to try to grasp the hidden meanings that exist within the story, and understand how it might affect you, first, try to understand the characters. The players.
I'm not going to kill myself.
That's what I'm talking about, Chris Chan. That's the noise I want to hear. Red Wing tipped $6.90. You got me like Vimalananda, giving our money and bestowing blessings when he hears something he likes. I read these books before, but you read them so well it adds another dimension to them. So captivating and a brilliant way to listen. Thanks, man. That's very complimentary. And I appreciate it. I need it more than ever. I need your support more than ever. I think I'm getting a job soon, so I can stop fucking begging like this, like a fucking asshole. Alright. The players. Rama, the indwelling spirit, is called Raja, King Rama, because he is king of the 72,000 nadis. Krishna also rules the nadis, but his Leela is different. He has a love affair with them. Some people find it easier to relate to the soul as king. Others prefer to relate to it as lover. You must find which way agrees best with your temperament, and relate in that way. As they say, the truth is one. The learned describe it in many ways. Rama's brother, Lakshmana, represents the power of concentration which helps the soul to regain its bride. His name, from the word Laksha, suggests one-pointed concentration, and in fact Lakshmana did focus his concentration on a single goal, his brother Rama, the individual soul. Sita, Rama's wife, is the Kundalini Shakti, the power of Ma on an individual level. Sita was not born from a womb as Rama was. She was found when her father, King Janaka, was plowing the ground to build a sacrificial altar. She comes, therefore, from Bhugarbha, the womb of the earth. Janaka means creator. It is Janaka who, by removing Sita from the earth element, creates her, or if you prefer, awakens her. Awakens seems more appropriate, since the earth element is at the Muladhara chakra. Exactly. Janaka, Sita's father, the king of Vidaha, was a truly amazing man. He had so purified the fire element within him that he used to sit on the throne with one foot resting in a blazing fire. Not near it, in it, and with one of his queens sitting on his left thigh. He would cup her left breast in his hand and go about the business of kingship without the least disturbance whatever. This is the real significance of the word Vidaha, which means bodiless. Even though Janaka had a body, he behaved as if he had none. When Rama came to Janaka's court to attend the Swayamvara ceremony, at which Sita would decide who she would wed, he was given Lord Shiva's bow to bend, which no one had ever been able to bend before. When Rama first bent and then broke the bow, Janaka realized that Rama was meant to marry Sita. Esoterically, well, this is something which cannot be communicated in words, but I can tell you this: Shiva's bow relates to the medulla oblongata. The medulla oblongata? Yes. The ancient rishis were well aware of anatomy, and as you have glimpsed somewhat from your study of Ayurveda. Now Rama and Sita have to leave for the forest almost immediately after being married. Lakshmana refuses to be separated from them. How can the power of concentration be separated from the soul and the ego? So Lakshmana refuses to be separated from them and accompanies them. When Kundalini unites with the soul, the two withdraw from the senses, which wither and die from lack of Shakti. And in fact, King Dasharatha died very soon after Rama left Ayodhya. Dasharatha means 10 chariots, the 10 senses. The senses allow us to become aware of the soul. This is how Dasharatha is Rama's father. All would have been well with Rama and Sita in the jungle had not Sita fallen prey to the curiosity and disobeyed the order of her brother-in-law Lakshmana, which is precisely what I kept telling you. Just because your Kundalini starts to get awakened does not mean that the job is over. In fact, your job is only beginning. Because she strayed from perfect concentration on the soul, Sita was abducted by Ravana. Ravana, the demon king who abducted Sita, represents the limited personality which constantly contemplates its greatness. I am everything. I am Lord of Lanka. Lanka is Lambija, the earth element. Ravana. I feel like I've heard this word before and I'm saying it wrong. It's like Ravana. Go with Ravana. I've been doing it. Let's not stop now. Ravana was a very powerful being. He had become Lord of the manifested universe. His 10 heads also stand for the 10 sense organs. He propitiates Shiva by chopping off these heads, which means that he forcibly restrained his senses from perceiving anything except Shiva. His offering is selfish, however. He is a demon. Once he had realized Shiva, Ravana wanted to carry him down to Lanka to live with him there, but Shiva is above the manifested universe, within the brain. And so when Ravana lifted Mountain Kailasa, Shiva's home, in order to carry it and Shiva back with him to Lanka, the Muladhara chakra, Lanka being the Muladhara chakra, Shiva pressed Ravana down with one toe, and Ravana's hands were trapped under the mountain. Ravana had to bellow hymns to Shiva for thousands of years before Shiva took pity on him and allowed him to escape. Ravana means howling. Rama lost Sita to a formidable foe, the limited, demonic human personality, which wants to use her for its own gratification. Rama had to wander far and wide before he could find any trace of Sita, just as you must search strenuously for Kundalini once she had self-identified with something other than the soul. Lakshmana, the one-pointed concentration, which helped Rama regain his bride, was his brother's only companion for much of his search, until they met Anjanaya, who immediately enlisted in Rama's service. Anjanaya is Prana, the son of the god of wind. Properly harnessed, Prana clears Kundalini's path to return to her lord, which is what Anjanaya did for Sita and Rama at every step. Anjanaya's role. Vimalananda paused for a moment and looked up to an image of Anjanaya, better known as Hanuman. His lip quivered almost imperceptibly with emotion as he spoke again. Anjanaya flew to Lanka, located Sita, and assured her that Rama was coming to rescue her. Before returning to Rama with the news of Sita's whereabouts, Anjanaya allowed himself to be captured and taken before Ravana to make Ravana aware of the gravity of what he had done. Then Anjanaya burned the city of Lanka to the ground, destroying Ravana's lovely fantasy world. Ravana... I'm not sure. Actually, Sita was responsible for the burning of Lanka. Ravana's minions wrapped Anjanaya's tail in oil-soaked rags to torment him. But when they lit the rags, Sita prayed to the god of fire to refrain from burning his flesh, and Anjanaya felt no burning. In fact, he felt a wonderfully cool sensation. He felt cool enough to go calmly about his work of destroying the city. This prayer of Sita's is actually a mantra. If you know it, you can sit in the fire for years on end, and not even one of your hairs will be singed. After all, Sita is Shita, cool. Wah, ma, wah. I don't know what wah is as an expression. W-A-H. Maybe I should go, woo! Anjanaya was able to burn Lanka with the help of his tail. Think of the esoteric meaning here. Lanka stands for the Muladhara chakra and the earth element, so that the earth element can no longer exert any effect on him whatsoever. Anjanaya burned it using his tail, which is attached to his body near the Muladhara chakra. A Siddhaka likewise totally burns all connection between Kundalini and the earth element with the help of prana moving in the Muladhara. After burning Lanka, Anjanaya returned to Rama. He is totally devoted to Rama, and with the help of the other monkeys, built a bridge so that Rama could cross over to Lanka. This process is called Situ Bandha. Internally, this bridge connects the Muladhara chakra to the Manipura chakra, bridging the Svadhisthana chakra. This particular bridge can only be built by a perfect celibate, someone like Anjanaya, who is not the least bit tempted by any enjoyment which the Svadhisthana, the sex chakra, can offer him. Anjanaya is strictly chaste, which is unusual for a monkey. Most monkeys spend their days mating or masturbating, but then Anjanaya is a monkey in form only. He is an incarnation of Lord Shiva, and he is sufficiently aware of his true nature that he is not affected or is affected very little by his simian nature. By bridging the ocean, the water element, Anjanaya was freed from being affected by water. This is a permanent bridge. When Anjanaya does something, it is impossible to change it. Even the external bridge that was built became permanent. Once Arjuna tried to be clever and destroy the real bridge, and he got nowhere. How could he possibly compete with the bravery and strength of Anjanaya, who is Mahavira Balavant, the great and powerful hero? You know the story of the Ramayana. Have you ever wondered why it was necessary to build a bridge over the sea from India to Lanka so that Rama and his armies could cross it? No, I haven't. The bridge was necessary because the ocean refused to cooperate with Rama. When every other living thing in the world was cooperating with Rama because they loved him so much, why wouldn't the ocean cooperate? Good question. The story should be logical. Some people think it was because Anjanaya wanted to show off and become famous, but that is impossible. He is the epitome of devoted service, the single-minded servant of Rama. He has no other thought than for Rama. The answer lies in the churning of the ocean. At the time of the Kurma Avatara. Of course, how elegant. The ocean was terribly tortured during the churning. How would you like to be churned? So although the ocean cooperated with Vishnu when Vishnu returned in the form of the Rama Avatara, it cooperated grudgingly and partially. There was no alternative but to build a bridge. So after the ocean of the body is tortured by the churning of prana that is necessary to generate the Amrita, a new channel must be created. Is this the idea? You're getting there, he laughed. Keep thinking about it. After the bridge was completed, Rama, Lakshmana, Anjanaya, and the monkeys invaded Lanka, and the battles between the forces of Rama and Ravana began. At one point, Lakshmana was seriously wounded. The chief physician reported that unless the Sanjivani herb, which can restore the dead to life, was brought within a few hours, Lakshmana would die. That herb was available only on a certain mountain in the Himalayas. Rama was distraught at the possibility of losing Lakshmana, his right arm, so Anjanaya volunteered to bring back Sanjivani. He flew to the mountain, but could not find the herb, so in order to save time, he uprooted the entire mountain and carried it back to Rama. Sanjivani was located, Lakshmana was saved, and Anjanaya returned the mountain to its proper place. Redwing says wah is their version of wow, wow, wow. Wowie wow wows. You may have seen pictures of Anjanaya flying through the air with a mountain in his hand. They are illustrations of this story. Think about its meaning for a moment. I'm not going to spell it out for you. That would be too easy. But it involves Lakshmana, the one-pointed concentration of the mind. Anjanaya, who here is the body's prana. And the mountain from the Himalayas, the vertebral column which contains the spinal cord with its physical nerves and subtle nadis. He let me think on these things for a few moments and then said, "Now, let me make this story even more complicated for you." "Thanks," I replied sardonically. As Anjanaya flew over Ayodhya with the mountain, Rama's brother and regent Bharata saw him in the sky and, taking him for a demon, shot him down with an arrow. When he realized his mistake, he was horrified, but Anjanaya reassured him and continued on his way. There was a sadhu I knew in Girnar who worshipped Anjanaya in the form of Langde, Langde, Langdi Lal, let's go with that. Anjanaya, who limps from the arrow in his thigh. So there was a sadhu I knew in Girnar who worshipped Anjanaya in the form of Langdi Lal, Anjanaya who limps from the arrow in his thigh. In fact, the sadhu who blessed M to be able to recite the Ramayana so well worshipped the Langdi Lal. Were they the same sadhu? I don't know. He did know clearly and quickly proceeded with this point. Think for just a moment. Anjanaya is immortal, a superman. How could an arrow shot by a mortal, even one so powerful as Bharata, even scratch his skin? Another conundrum. He continued, "This is easy enough to understand. Bharata did everything in Rama's name. He even shot his arrows in Rama's name. Anjanaya is utterly devoted to Rama, and only when an arrow with Rama's name hits him does he fall, and only when Bharata, Rama's viceroy, gives him leave to go in the name of Rama can he depart." This is becoming difficult to follow. These things take time to digest. Keep trying. Anjanaya helped Rama conquer and kill Ravana. Now Rama and Ravana both begin with R. In India, the first letter of a person's first name reflects where the moon is in that person's horoscope. Have you noticed how people whose names begin with the same letter, which means that they have the same moon sign, are often enemies? Astrologically, it is not supposed to be this way. They should be friends, but often they are enemies. Krishna and Kamsa, Jesus and Judas, Gandhi and Godse. True enough, but of course Jesus and Judas were not from India. But remember the phonetic value of words. Names in India are given in this way to help balance out the mind. The moon controls the mind, especially the emotional side of the mind. Whatever your name, it is going to exert a strong effect on you, because every time someone calls you by that name, and every time you think of yourself by that name, the phonetic value of that name will affect your consciousness, just like a mantra does. Wow. That means that there are billions of people out there in the world who have the wrong names, which means their very names are probably unbalancing them even further. Definitely. But after all, this is Kali Yuga, you know. You have to expect this sort of thing. What about my name? As it turns out, your name should have started with R anyway, so there is no problem. Quite a coincidence or something. Or something. You shared the same moon sign as both Rama and Ravana. R represents Rambija. R represents Rambija, the fire element. Anyone who worships Rama is actually worshipping fire. Ravana is fire still polluted by the limited ahamkara. Rama is the eternal soul, pure fire. I understood. So long as my own innate selfishness remains, I remain equivalent to Ravana, no matter how great and powerful I may become. But there is a chance, should I purify my own fire element sufficiently, that I might yet achieve Rama. After Anjanaya frees himself of all traces of egotism by helping Rama, he is then free of all limitations associated with the fire element. A tiny trace of individual effort remained when he burned Lanka. This is why his tail was set alight. Even then, Sita prevented him from being burned. Once he is free of every taint, though, fire can no longer touch him at all. Dude moved a mountain? My friend in the chat, are you from a Christian background? Jesus says you too will move mountains. Greater things, even. After Rama killed Ravana, Sita was freed from the demon's clutches and returned to her rightful husband. In the body of the Siddhaka, this suggests that the fire element becomes totally purified. The Kundalini Shakti is freed from the clutches of Jathara Agni and is returned to the influence of Bhuta Agni. When Sita is retrieved, she must submit to an ordeal by fire to prove that she has maintained her purity, that she has not been tainted by Jathara Agni. You must submit to a similar but internal test at this stage. If you pass, you become free of the need to eat. From the Manipura chakra, the Kundalini goes to the Anahata chakra. Rama, Sita, Lakshmana, and a few others flew from Lanka back to Rama's capital, Ayodhya, in a sort of airplane, the Pushpaka Vimana. It is natural that they would fly, since the Anahata is the seat of the air element. Anjanaya is the son of the wind god. He is in his own element at the Anahata, and it is here that a Siddhaka can meet him. The doors to the 3 lower chakras are irrevocably closed, so you will never chance upon him there. And when his consciousness is in the Vishuddha or higher, how will you be able to contact him? Beyond the Anahata, he can see only Rama. Up to the Anahata, you can still be aware of other individuals and have a desire to play about with them, though you see them as all forms of your beloved. This is why fakirs, Muslim sadhus, once they reach a Chauthe Asman I'm going to go with, the 4th heaven, are always doing work for people and helping out the helpless. The 4th heaven is the 4th chakra, the Anahata. Once you reach the Vishuddha, though, there is Vishesha Shuddhi, special purification, and there is no wish of any kind. And beyond the Vishuddha are the Ajna, where all that remains is the consciousness of individuality, and the Sahasrara, where nothing remains. No, if you want to meet Anjanaya, you must do so at the heart. When you are endangered, why does your hand go to your chest? Because Vishnu is the presiding deity of the Anahata chakra, and you are instinctively requesting him to save you, to preserve your life. Anjanaya, the servant of Vishnu in the form of Rama, is also a Rudra, an aspect of Shiva the Destroyer. So it is no wonder that the Anahata chakra is the place of both life and death. Have you seen pictures of Anjanaya ripping open his chest with his fingernails to show that nothing remains in his heart but the purest form of Rama? I thought for a moment before replying. Those that I have seen usually show both Sita and Rama together in Anjanaya's heart. Yes, most do, but that is incorrect. Rama alone resides there. People sometimes speak of Anjanaya and Rama as different, but they are wrong. In fact, Anjanaya is Rama's heart. What? Of course, Anjanaya is Prana, the son of wind. He causes the heart to beat. How could Rama ever exist without his heart? Here is a story for you. Once Sita was complaining to Rama. "O Aryaputra, son of the just," she said, "sometimes I want to have a private conversation with you, but we are never alone. Anjanaya is always with us. Please send him out now, and let us talk alone." Rama replied, "O wife, what are you saying? What is there for you to tell me that Anjanaya cannot hear?" Sita answered, "I have some private womanly work, and since Anjanaya is not married, he cannot listen." Rama said, "All right, just to please you, I will send Anjanaya away for a short time." He turned and spoke to Anjanaya. "I will inform you when the discussion is over, then come back in. Meanwhile, please go out and eat some fruit from the trees in the garden." So Anjanaya went out to the garden. He looked at the fruit trees, but couldn't bear to pluck any fruit from them. How could he hurt them? So he sat underneath a shady tree and began to sing a song in praise of his master Rama. Soon he was lost in samadhi. About this time, Rama inexplicably began to yawn. But Anjanaya was so intent on his song, Ram Ram Sita Ram, Ram Ram Sita Ram, that he had completely forgotten his earthly existence, and he continued to sit and sing. Rama was in a fix. He was yawning incessantly, and no one could cure him. They called his personal physician, who checked his pulse, and said there was no underlying pathology. They called the astrologer, who said that all the planets were in good positions, and there were no inauspicious signs. Finally, after calling a few more people, they called Rama's brother Lakshmana. He also did not know what to do, but he did remember to call Anjanaya. Anjanaya was out in the garden, deep in samadhi. By continuously chanting Sita Ram into his ears for many minutes, Lakshmana, with difficulty, brought Anjanaya back to earthly consciousness and told him, "Something is wrong with Lord Rama." In one jump, Anjanaya was in the palace, and the moment Rama saw him, the yawning stopped. The yawn was Rama's way of telling Anjanaya. This is a question from Svoboda. The yawn was Rama's way of telling Anjanaya to return to the palace. You are a student of Ayurveda. What can you tell me about yawning? It is caused by an abnormal upward movement of prana. Oh, I see. Correct. Anyway, Sita learned a good lesson. Wherever Rama is, Anjanaya must also be there, and vice versa. But it is also true that wherever Rama is, Sita must also be. Once Sita asked Anjanaya, "Do you like Rama's lotus feet better or mine?" A tough question. How could Anjanaya insult either his beloved Rama or Rama's Shakti Sita? So he told her, "Your lotus feet are the softest and most enjoyable, while Rama's are a little hard, but for liberation none can surpass Rama's." Now, I have always loved Anjanaya. He is my most beloved deity. But here he was wrong. Without Sita, Rama was nothing. There are so many instances that he had to come begging to Anjanaya for help. Only the Divine Mother can grant liberation. Nothing is higher than Ma. Only a few, like Anjanaya, can go beyond Maya, the transitory, to Rama, the permanent. And they do so by Ma's grace, nothing else. So Rama requires Anjanaya, Sita, Lakshmana to be complete? Yes, which is why he is called perfection encompassed. He is the perfect man, but is subject to limits. This is why you always find all four images in a temple of Rama. They form a team. They cannot be separated from one another. After returning to Ayodhya, Rama ruled as king, assisted by Lakshmana, Sita, and Anjanaya. His rule, called Rama Rajya, was an ideal time in which to live. All was harmonious throughout his kingdom. And esoterically, I suppose, Rama Rajya happens whenever someone attains Rama consciousness in this way. Of course, regardless of when or where Rama lived and ruled on earth, Rama Rajya happens whenever a sadhaka realizes the Rama within himself or herself and installs that Rama as the inner ruler. Rama ruled peacefully and happily for many years, but since all that is created must be destroyed, no matter how perfect it may be, one day Mahakala, who is time personified, came to have a chat with him. Mahakala stipulated that Rama must immediately disown anyone who might happen to disturb their conversation. He wanted no worldly influence whatsoever to interfere. As it happened, Lakshmana did not know about this stipulation, and he inadvertently disturbed Rama and Mahakala. Rama, who always kept his word, had no alternative but to reject Lakshmana permanently. Lakshmana decided that life without Rama was not worth living, and so he jumped into the river which flows through Ayodhya, the Sarayu, and ended himself. Rama is the true, permanent, undying, indwelling self. Lakshmana is Eka Laksha, concentration on a single point. The mind is riveted on Rama. Even the last object or laksha in the consciousness must be dissolved before Nirvikalpa Samadhi becomes possible. In an individual sadhaka, this final distinction jumps into the Sarayu in the forehead, a nadi which arises from Manasasarovara, the lake of the mind within the brain. When concentration itself drowns and merges with the infinite, only Rama remains, because Sita has meanwhile returned to her source, the womb of Mother Earth. The soul has now relinquished everything, even its own Shakti, its own personal Maya. After Rama loses Lakshmana, he loses all desire to continue to exist. And after bidding farewell to Anjanaya, he enters the river himself. When Rama merges, there is Nirvikalpa Samadhi, and the play of the Ramayana is ended. Everyone dies or disappears in the end except Anjanaya. Rama tells Anjanaya, "Although I am God incarnate, I must also die. But you are the incarnation of Rudra, the god of death himself. You cannot die." And it is true, Anjanaya can never die. He is immortal, like Mahakala, the original Rudra. I know that Anjanaya is matronymic, a name derived from his mother's name, Anjani, I said. I also know how much you love Ma, but is there some specific reason you insist on calling Anjanaya Anjanaya and almost never call him Hanuman or Maruti? Well, being a worshipper of Ma, I always like to remind myself of her. And Anjanaya may be a great hero, but even he has to listen to his mother. When Anjanaya went to meet his mother after Sita had been rescued, he related the whole story of the Ramayana to her, and then told her, "Ma, I have been true to your milk. I have dedicated my life entirely to Sri Ramachandra, so much so that I have become a celibate. I will never even look on any woman except you and Sita-ji." And Johnny told him, "How can you tell me that you have been true to my milk, when you could have taken Sita-ji back to Rama yourself directly, without the need for any war? No, you have shamed my milk." Anjanaya replied to her, "No, Ma, I could not do that. I could only do what Lord Rama orders me to do. If I had so been ordered, I would have done everything myself, and Ramachandra-ji would not have had to lift his little finger. But doing as I was told, other good things happened. For example, all the all the Rakshasas, demonic beings, who saw me, changed their inherent natures and started to worship Rama, thanks to the beautiful form you gave me. And then his mother was mollified. Do you know that Anjanaya is described as Koti Kandarpa Lavanya? Let's see, the beauty of 10 million Kandarpas. But doesn't Kandarpa mean onion in Sanskrit? Yes, it does. But is that its only meaning? Do you think anyone would refer to Anjanaya as having the beauty of 10 million onions? Of course not. True enough. I stretched to think of other meanings of Kandarpa, and then told him. Kandarpa is one of the names of Kamadeva, the god of love. Right. Now imagine how handsome the god of love must be, and then multiply by 10 million. Then you will have an idea of Anjanaya's beauty. But that is not all. Kandarpa also refers to
I'm not going to kill myself.
You get into it and you hear Christian blaring in your face. Scares the crap out of me. Christian sneaking up on me with his fangs. Red Wing tipped 420. The Eastern tradition holds a lot for Westerners seeking a viable doctrine and tradition. These esoteric texts are important, and those Westerners who master this tradition can revitalize the West, at the same time appropriate them for our form of faith. Yeah, I mean, as the oldest, what do you want to call it? There's no, like, one word that'll do this justice, but as, like, the oldest pagan religion in the world, it definitely holds a lot of keys to many other cultures and religions that have been lost along the way. Red Wing says he's sorry for spooking me. It's okay, bud. You paid me. It's okay. Right. Now imagine how handsome the god of love must be, and then multiply by 10 million. Then you will have an idea of Anjanaya's beauty, but that is not all. Kandarpa also refers to a particular type of prana, which is connected with apana. The kanda is a nadi plexus where apana can be made to move upward instead of downward. Now here is another question for you. Since Anjanaya always meditates on Rama, never forgetting him for an instant, why hasn't he become Rama, according to the law of caterpillar and butterfly? He was enjoying this. I don't know, I replied. The answer is simple. He does not become Rama because he deliberately does not want to. He is Shiva, who knows only how to give, not to take, even if it is only a question of form. This is why Shiva is called the Great Giver. Of course. My concentration was evidently flagging. Vimalananda indulgently smiled at me, like the Divine Mother herself, and ended our conversation by saying, "So, now you know something of what I am thinking when I listen to the Ramayana." It's the end of this chapter. Gurus and Disciples, which I believe is the last chapter, is the next one. We have a few yantras to go over here, I guess. The yantras of the 10 Mahavidya goddesses. We got number 1, Kali, number 2, Tara. Is it worth to go in and analyze these? I don't even know how to do that. You got a lot of lotus petals going on. You got triangles. You got what would be known as the Star of David, with the 2 triangles intersected. Usually representing, you could say as above, so below. You could say the upward and downward movement of prana or energy. So 1 Kali, 2 Tara, 3 Chinamasta, 4 Bhuvaneswari, 5 Bangala, 6 Dhumavati, 7 Kamala, 8 Mantangi, 9 Sodasi, 10 Bhairava. The 10 Mahavidya goddesses originate from the legend of Shiva and his first consort Sati. Incensed at the refusal of her father Daksha to invite her ascetic husband to the great sacrifice, Sati manifests the 10 powerful forms of the Mahavidya goddesses. Sati eventually destroys herself, and Shiva, overcome with the grief, allows Vishnu to dissect her body and scatter it over the subcontinent of India. The places where the various parts of her body fell became the sacred sites, Shakti-pithas, of Devi worship, wherein the land itself embodies the sacred form of the dismembered goddess. From the legend it derives the practice of sati, where the faithful wife offers herself to her husband's funeral pyre. Some of the Mahavidyas, such as Kali and Tara, have several forms. Vimalananda self-identified with Tara, the second of the Mahavidyas, in her form as Smashan Tara, Tara of the cremation grounds. So I believe there are going to be two more streams where I'm doing readings from AGHORA 2, Kundalini. And then I will move on to something else. It'll probably, almost certainly be done within a week. Before I'm back on YouTube, that's for sure. So I want everyone to go to yakovalive.com, listen to the podcasts, buy that merch tab, baby. Patreon.com/yakovalive to come hang out in the Discord, play video games, watch movies, talk about esoteric shit with the homies. Hell yeah. We got some bots showing up in the Twitch chat. Glad fucking Twitch is full of bots. Phenomenal. Thank you very much to Red Wing in particular, Mr. Marie. I don't know how to say that, dude. Is that like a fucking, or like a Russian character? Is my font just all stupid looking? I don't know. We'll figure that out next week, folks. Yeah, Red Wing, I'll get back to you as soon as I'm done with this. Thank you very much.